Hello, everyone who's joining. Facebook just went live. It's under a minute. I'm sure people will join. So how is everyone's week? We're getting back to work. It's 2021, January 15th. It is now officially the third Friday of this year. So I hope everyone's getting back to work. I know I am. And this is going to be our class number 8. And it is about closing the deal. So we have gone from learning and understanding the listings to understanding the general basics of commercial real estate, to understanding the paperwork, the offer letter terms, how to show, how to market. And we touched on the beginning of this stuff last time in terms of the negotiating the deal, but now we're going to just follow up and finish this off and talk about how we actually close the deal. So welcome everyone that's joining on Facebook. I think we can just get started. So where we left off last week in terms of negotiating the LOI is talking about going back and forth with the other side of the deal, whether it's an agent or the owner or a business owner or a buyer, and agreeing to certain terms that are in the LOI or the offer letter. So we market the property, people call, they come see it after we show, we follow up with them, and then they want to make an offer. And the offer letter is called an LOI, and here are some of the basic terms. So we're going to pick it up from here, and then basically what we're going to do is go from accepted offer letter into all the steps that go beyond that and how to get ultimately paid. So let me share my screen too. So backing into the offer letter again, we went through this last time, but let's say, all right, they want, like 20,000 square feet of space on the ground floor, and the base term is going to be like 5 years, right? So I'm not going to fill it in like technically exactly, but like, and with a 5-year option, and the rent we're going to say is, I'm going to say it's $100 a foot. Right. So like, here are some of the things that we're agreeing on. All right. So let's say this is a commercial lease and someone wants to lease the ground floor. Let's say some burger company wants to lease the ground floor. All right, so they want 20,000. It's a huge burger company, biggest retail burger company in the world. 20,000 square feet. So they, okay, that's fine. They want a 5-year term. That's fine. 5-year option. That's fine too. The rent, we've agreed $100 a foot, right? And $100 a foot for 20,000 square foot space times 100. It's $2 million a year, $166,000 a month. It's a huge rent. All right. Then we're gonna just say like, all right, we agreed to, let's say 3% escalations on the increase, and we've agreed to the taxes. We'll say there's no tenant improvement allowance. The possession date is when the leases are fully executed. They'll say there's 2 months of free rent, so 60 days, and landlord's going to deliver it as is, right? So now all of these things are agreed upon, right? I'm not going to talk about go into detail about all this, but actually I am, because the contract's going to get into detail about this. So burger fast food restaurant, right? So, all right. So all of this is agreed upon, right? So we're saying, so then what happens next, right? I mean, you don't need me, right? You don't need any classes, your college degree. Landlord wants to lease it to this fast food burger joint. We've agreed on all these terms. So what's next? All right, sounds good. Here's the keys. All right, so let's continue. Let's say for an exclusive loose, they're the only burger restaurant in complex, right? Let's say they want to be the only burger joint in here. We're not going to get into the SMDA. We won't get into the environmentals. Let's say subletting, they want to allow or whatever, terminate. All right, utilities were discussed, and a million other things. So without getting too deep into this, we want to talk about agreements, where's security deposits? See, I have this huge long form, and I think I need to add in security deposit because I never added in here. I mean, I always have to add it in manually. So let's talk about some like finances, right? So let's say they want to put 3-month security. And like your residential, what do you do when you have accepted offer for residential, right? You agree to the LOI terms, right? Or the offer letter, or the binder, whatever you want to call it. And now it's time to do some financial fact checking, some due diligence, right? So this, we talked about this, I think, in the very first class. So the more stable their finances are, the less security deposit or down payment or contingencies you're going to need, right? So let's say in a residential deal is $1 million home and someone's going to buy it all cash as is. And they say, look, I don't have a job. I don't have good credit, right? I don't have money in the bank account. The worst like scenario possible. But I'm going to buy it. And they say, well, I'm not going to sell it to you because you're not going to get your mortgage. And you say, well, don't worry, it'll be all cash. Okay, fine. So when do you want to close? And they say, we'll close soon. We'll close in a month, right? But now so what do you do as a residential agent? You keep showing the house, right? Because this person says they're gonna buy the house all cash, but based on their financials, you're not sure if this is actually gonna happen. You're not gonna sit around and wait for a month to see if this person pulls through, especially when your client, the seller, now needs to hire an attorney to draw up contracts, right? We want to see how serious this person is without having to invest more time and money into it. So the all cash offer, we may say to them, okay, if you're so serious and you really want to do this, do a couple of things first, right? One is do your home inspection. Spend the $500 or $1,000 to do your home inspection, right? Number two, hire your attorney. Give me your attorney contact information to let us know that you've spoke to an attorney and that you're ready to proceed, right? And number three, there may be even some kind of good faith deposit, right? If you want us to wait for a month on your closing, and you don't want us to show anymore, then you may have to put down $10,000, like a $10,000 non-refundable, based on a number of things. And it's like that number of things, like we'll call them contingencies, are an expression of how serious you are. So we may say, like, all right, do your home inspection first, right? When the results of the home inspection come back, let's say it's clean and there's nothing left to do, then you ask them for the deposit and say, look, there's nothing on the home inspection holding you back from doing this purchase. So now put down your good faith deposit. And you say, okay, I'm gonna put down $10,000. So that $10,000 will keep your seller at ease, because now they can, hypothetically, they have the money for the attorney and for the time spent to begin this process, right? Now, in the contract, it's also going to say at the time of the contract signing, they're going to have to put down a down payment of maybe, like, I don't know, 5 or 10%, let's say 10%. So they have to put down $100,000. And because your finances are not where they need to be to get a loan from the bank, then we're going to say it has to be all cash and there can't be any contingencies on it, right? And what that means is that if they proceed with the closing but don't close, that 100,000 down payment will be technically lost and handed over to the seller, right? So that sounds like a big deal, and it is, because we're taking the most unstable financial situation. But you can, the reason why I'm telling you this is that you can take the most unstable situation and put these preventative measures in each place, in each step where it needs to be, to push the deal along and have your client, right, on the safe side of things in case the deal doesn't go through. So on the flip side of that, I just did a deal for a friend of mine, and he was in the Marines and he works as a firefighter. His wife is an attorney, and they have amazing credit. They have stable jobs, and he's getting a VA loan, which is a 0% down loan, right? So because it's a 0% down loan, that means there's no 10% deposit either, because the bank's paying for everything. So in this scenario, it's like there's the least given to the seller in terms of collateral. So what did we give the seller here? Some credit reports, some pay stubs, and a pre-approval from the bank. Now, on the other side of the deal, the listing agent, he's also he understands mortgage financing. So he's looking at all the paperwork and saying, okay, this looks very legit. This should pass the mortgage approval process for a VA loan, no problem. And he convinced the seller, hey, these are good buyers. They should be able to get their mortgage. Let's sell it to them. So there was no contract deposit, right? And the only deposit that was made was like a small good faith deposit, right? So why is this seller willing to be stuck in a contract process with these particular buyers that are not putting any money down, and to be stuck in this process for like anywhere from 3 to 6 months, right? Because their house is on the market, is not being sold anymore because we're officially under contract, and the VA loan has more steps to it. So let's say they don't get the loan, the buyer can walk away. Let's say the buyer intentionally walks away, even when contractually they're not supposed to. Well, the only thing they have now, they don't have the 10% down payment, right? So all they have is that $10,000 deposit. So you could say, okay, you get $10,000, but look, you're going to tie up your whole house for 6 months, and all you have is 10,000. So if that was the case, no one would go for that. The tax alone is more than $10,000. Forget about everything else that you have to do to maintain the property during that time, right? The $10,000 was just a show of a good faith, hence the name of that deposit, a good faith deposit, that the buyer is actually going to proceed, right? And what they are proceeding with are their financial credentials, right? Not locked in collateral like the other example where it's okay, $10,000 down now and $100,000 on contract, and then no mortgage contingency. In the first example, we're locking in collateral to make it safe for the seller. In the second example, we're analyzing the financials and saying, based on, it's like a credit history. Based on your credit history, we are going to take this risk to proceed, right? And as an added kicker, put down the 10K, show me you're serious about this, do your home inspection, get your attorney, and that will cover any insecurity I have about whether this deal is going to go through or not. So So that's a very long way of basically saying, you know, how much security deposit do we need, right? So let me just take this off of the share screen real quick. All right, so that's a long way of saying a couple of things. How much security deposit do we need is one. Number two, if it's a sale and there's financing involved, then just like any residential deal, you need to speak to the financing involved, or you need to understand the financing involved and make sure that this can go through. With a lot of leasing deals, the owners do all of the due diligence in terms of like imagine you go to Manhattan and you're doing like a rental application, right? They're still checking pay stubs, tax returns, full application, et cetera, the whole works. So this is just for residential rental, right? I just want to live here for a year, right? A lot of the time, the commercial deals also do the same checks, but in the same way as like even a residential rental, you could just say like, look, I'm a foreign exchange student. I have no information for you, but I could put 6 months deposit and say, okay, 6 month deposit, that works. I don't even know if that's legal anymore as of last year's new rent regulations, but let's say this was like a couple of years ago. You know, you can put 6 month deposit, and that should cover for a lot of people with no social or visiting from out of country or whatever reason, or maybe they just have poor financials. You know, maybe they have everything, but the financial is just very poor. A lot, like, you know, very a lot of debt and all that stuff. Well, you know, people need a place to live, and there's ways to get around it, such as security deposit. All right. But then there's a lot of spaces that, you know, the owners don't need to check any of this stuff. They don't really particularly care, right? Because what happens is that there are a lot of business entities and LLCs and corporations that are signing these leases, right? And look, you can check the entire business background, but at the end of the day, if a business isn't going to pay the rent, you know, they're going to find a way to not pay the rent, or maybe they're just not going to sign a lease that's going to get them personally liable or something like that. So what happens is the owner just does like a standard check and asks for some security deposit, and we get them in there, right? And then aside from security deposit, what other financially impactful things are there in this deal, right? So aside from the rent price or the sales price and all the terms, there's the security deposit, and then there's also the broker fees, right? So let's say we're doing a 50-50 co-broke, and that's all agreed upon and fine. Okay, great. We have an accepted deal. That was a really long way of saying we have an accepted deal. So, okay, we have an accepted deal, and now the leases are being drawn up, right? So what usually happens at this point for a lot of new agents and a lot of experienced agents too, you know, we've been working so long showing this property. Finally, someone has an offer. We've been negotiating back and forth. Again, a lot of the time, this offer letter, it goes back and forth maybe like 6 or 7 times before we finally have an accepted deal. And we're talking about all sorts of stuff now. We're talking about building hours. We're talking about all those terms we talked about before. We're talking about build out, specific questions to the specific business, like, is there an exhaust fan? Are there bathrooms? Can we do different kind of construction? All these questions are hashed out. And now the attorneys come and start making the lease, right? So when attorneys comes and starts making a lease, they're taking the LOI and they are converting all these terms into what you would call the lease or the contract, right? And within the lease or contract, now you're going to start talking about tons of different stuff. So people are going to be going back and forth. how's the best way to say this? People are going to go back and forth on the contract for a lot of different things, and some of them for the smallest of things, right? It's like certain scenarios will likely never ever occur, but just in case, the attorneys are hired to make sure the language written in the contract is acceptable to their client, right? And what that means is like it's a push and pull in terms of how much protection they're getting for each clause. And the attorneys can go back and forth on a lot of these things, and get and really get the deal stuck, or both attorneys could just not care and just, you know, the tenant doesn't care and they just sign and just buy the thing, right? There's all these different scenarios. So what are some of the things to look out for when the deal goes into contract? First is to follow the contract discussion with the attorneys and make sure any clauses that can be fixed get fixed. Okay, what do I mean by that? A lot of the time, the attorneys, they only know the deal starting from receiving this LOI. They've never been to the space. They don't know any of the previous negotiations. All they know is this offer letter and the structuring the lease in the proper way, right? So what's going to happen is there may be a number of small questions that pop up, like, oh, what are the building hours? It says this on the lease, but when I went to the building, it said different hours. Well, those are like the COVID hours, right? Because there's temporarily changed hours during COVID that don't reflect the normal operating hours. Okay, well, if the attorneys don't know that, they're gonna get stuck on this. So it's like your job to go and make sure that all of these different little questions are taken care of. Then there's like the medium-sized questions, which are gonna be something more like, let's say the environmental work comes into play. That I deleted from here. Let's say like outdoor seating. Let's say, okay, this burger restaurant wants to make sure there's outdoor seating, and they're requesting that they could put 10 tables. But the owner doesn't know if 10 tables can go there. So they're going to have to write it in a way where it's like, they're allowed to put the maximum legally allowable tables out for outdoor seating. Well, all the outdoor seating rules and regulations right now, because of COVID, are constantly being adjusted once every month. So the attorneys don't really know what's going on. The owner doesn't know what's going on. And the tenant doesn't really know either, like the burger joint, but all they know is that they need 10 tables out there. Otherwise, it's not going to work. It's too risky to open a new restaurant right now without the guarantee in the lease that they can put outdoor seating. Well, look, this is going to be an issue, and the tenant should be doing their due diligence. The owner usually is not going to be doing this due diligence, because it's like the owner is a landlord, right? And they have their own business maybe, but any type of business can come into this space. It's not the owner's job to learn the specific nuance and rules and regulation of each new business that's coming in, right? So usually it's upon the tenant. You go speak to DOB or whoever to figure out the tables, and a lot of time they do. Especially they're dropping all this big money. Sometimes these bigger companies, they already know, right? They have teams figuring this stuff out before they even visit the property. Let's say, like, that's a little bit that's a little bit of a dream scenario, but a lot of the time these tenants don't know, and some of them are big companies too. They may be expanding in New York City. So these are some of the things, right, where like, all right, I'm gonna call my architect friends, I'm gonna call other business whether they're clients or just contacts, I might reach out to the Queen's Chamber of Commerce and ask them, hey, is there someone that can help me understand and identify the outdoor seating for this space, right? And if I can figure that out and send it over and say, look, it is confirmed, you can put 10, great. But it might be confirmed that you can only put 7. And now the tenant's like, oh man, 7? I don't know if that's gonna work. We gotta go back in-house to our accounting department and see if that makes sense, right? So there's different degrees of problems that need to be worked out. And on any deal, it could very well be that nobody needs our help. The landlord knows their shit. The buyer or the tenant, they know their shit. The attorneys, everyone has a team, right? And they're like, thank you, broker Michael, for bringing the clients. We can take it from here. Anything you add now is just going to be unnecessary and noise. Okay, fine. But sometimes neither of these parties have teams or know what's going on. And you're stuck in a situation where it's like, oh man, you could be having dinner with your family saying, and they all know about the deal. You've been talking about getting the listing, showing the listing. Oh, someone might put an offer. Oh, we have an accepted offer. So they've been tracking the deal with you, right? And then you're like, man, it's all about this outdoor seating clause right now. And, we need to get paid our $30,000 because this is going to pay our bills for the next 3 months. And it's going to be a huge closing. And my life depends on this thing, right? And they just can't figure out this outdoor seating. It's so stupid. Can't someone just figure it out? Yeah, someone can figure it out. You know who that is? That's you. And a lot of the time, like I said last class, 50% of the deals are just going to close. They don't need you. But 50% of the deal are going to fall apart unless you keep it together. It's like a glue. Our job is to be the glue that holds the deal together. And we all can play this role. I can rely on the owners to do it. I can rely on the buyer, which a lot of people do all the time. Hey, you just figure it out. If you don't want it and you can't figure it out, then forget it then. And the deal really just do their job and get this thing closed. But how many times have you said, oh, the attorneys are taking forever, and you call attorney number 1. I emailed this attorney last week and he still hasn't got back to me. And call attorney number 2. You can't get him on the phone. Whatever, right? At the end of the day, you want to, how I do it is I proactively try to keep everything together and close the deal until someone tells me they don't need my help. Then I'm very thankful for that. And then I just kind of monitor it from afar to make sure nothing's getting screwed up, right? And if people say they need my help, yeah, I'm already helping. I'm here. What's necessary? And then, look, there's going to be a million different problems that come up. It could be anything. So the wider my contact pool is, the more I come out every day and work, the more people I know, the easier it is going to be for me to solve problems, right? So literally there's an infinite amount of problems. I learn every single deal, how to handle a new problem. And then sometimes there's deals where like, oh, I've handled all these problems before, and I look like a maestro. I look like a master at this job. So that's really fun too. All right. So during this contract, there's tons of different things that pop up, and we fix them or we don't. And just one last thing about these contracts: small companies and big companies, they operate differently. So there's a wide variety of different ways to fix these things and different problems that come up. All right. So now let's say the contract is agreed upon. Hallelujah. Everything's done. Everything's agreed. We have a final, and on a sale or a lease, it's the same process. You're going to see the attorneys start emailing back and forth. Okay, we're finally good. Thank you. Hugs and kisses. Let's schedule this closing date. Okay, so we schedule, and a number of things now need to occur. Let me just pull up my other screens and stuff so I know what I'm talking about. Oh, it's on me. Okay, anyway. Yeah, it is on me. All right. So after there is a offer, then you circle back with the attorneys. You make sure that whatever needs to be brought to the signing is brought. Checks, IDs, date, time, location. Everyone goes to sign, right? Before that, you send an invoice to the owners, right, or the attorneys, saying what the payment structure is going to be. For a lot of the smaller deals, what people are going to be used to seeing is pay upon closing or pay upon lease signing, right? You close, sign, you get your check, everyone's happy, right? They didn't bring your check, you start freaking out like, yo, where's my check? Are they going to pay me? How come they didn't bring the check? And they say, oh, we forgot, we wrote it to the wrong name. Now we got to drive back to Long Island and get a new check. You're like, oh my God, oh my God. And you go to sleep that night, you can't sleep, and you're like, are they going to pay me the check? And there's other deals where the payment structure may be split into multiple payments, right? And a lot of time it's because, look, the owners and for a lease, let's say, for a sale, they get all the money up front. There should be nothing to complain about, and then you get your money from that money that they received. On a lease, it's a little bit different. You're calculating the lease value over many numbers of years, and that's a big number to pay up front. There's a lot of insecurity. Like if the tenant moves in and does everything, but then they move out one day, like 6 months into the lease, then basically the owner didn't get paid anything, right? So it's like sometimes you got to stagger the payments, and this is very common in leasing and even sometimes sales. If the commission is very, very big, they may, for whatever reason, decide to stagger the payment or whatever the scenario. I mean, I've never encountered this, but I'm just kind of brainstorming. It could be that for whatever reason it's a big purchase and the purchase is getting delivered in installments or something like that. Who knows? Every contract can be written any way, right? And then, if the purchase is being done in installments, then they're going to pay out in installments, whatever, right? So the invoicing goes to usually for a smaller to medium-sized company, a particular person, and for a larger company, it may go to the corporate accounting department, right? So you get paid for the deal. Then whether there's a co-broke or anything like that, that's been negotiated too in the offer letter and solidified into the lease, hopefully, or you have a separate agreement that ties to all the paperwork, right? And that gets all paid out. So once you do that, then it's customary for a lot of agents to give a closing gift. And what that closing gift entails is whatever you want it to be. And after you close the deal, see, there's a very important piece of this to close out the deal. I'll tell you what we do at Project Queens, and it covers a little bit more than the usual. But after giving the gift, what's the next step, right? So I got paid at closing. I deposit my check. I brought a bottle of wine, and that's it. I am out. I'm going home. We're gonna go celebrate. I booked my vacation tickets. I'm confirming it, and I'm out on Friday. Right? No, there's still stuff to do. You can't just run away, right? You got to close out the MLS or the LoopNet, right? You have this listed up on all this different stuff, right? So we're reversing the process. We're going to close out all the marketing. So if it's MLS, if it's LoopNet, if you have it on any other sites, you might want to now also take it off your website, right? If you have a website or your company's website, you will. So that's cleaning everything up. Then after that, you want to market yourself, right? So we were talking about marketing the company, the listings. We touched on marketing ourselves a little bit, but we didn't really talk about marketing ourselves for real. So every time I close a deal or the company closes a deal, we send it out on a Instagram. So this is January 2021. These things get dated, yearly, but you get the idea. Right now on Instagram, there is a handle called Traded, and it just kind of blasts closed deals to their Instagram page, and a lot of people follow it. It's like a lot of money. It's $200 every time just to post, hey, I closed this deal. But you know, that's something I do. I do an email blast to the 2,000 contacts in my system, saying, oh, you know, we closed this deal. Then we do a social media blast, and yeah. Then another thing that we do at Project Queens is that, look, the deal has a lot of data, right? And a lot of this stuff is done already, but just to recap what we're doing, especially at the end, we're taking the Google Drive file that we use and putting this into like the closed section, right? I'm going into HubSpot, which is the CRM that I use, and closing it out and bringing that to the new section of like closed deals. All the accounting information we talked about, the leases, the bills, the checks, et cetera, et cetera. This stuff gets all saved because it needs to be saved, right? I think legally it needs to be saved for like 3 years. And then we have the history, right? So we could look back at it at any time and see what happened. And if there's questions, particularly if there's questions, if there's debates on what this payments, things like that, we could go all circle back, right? The next thing we do is what else happened during this listing, right? So, you know, this is super duper important. The listing is there because we got the listing, we're servicing our client, we're trying to make money. But it also helps you market yourself through these closing, celebratory marketing, through just literally marketing the property. Michael Wang, space for sale, call me, you know, put it on all these different stuff we talk about the marketing. People see my name, okay? Then what else happened? We encountered tons of different leads for this property, right? And only one of them got it. So what about the other 10 people that called, right? Do we call them back? We have all their information. Mrs. Wang that is looking for, you know, 20,000 square foot of space. The burger joint got it, but she wanted to put a daycare, right? We take all this information and then upload it back into our CRM. And then agents can now work on these active leads, right? So I remember back in the day when I was at my old real estate shops, when I first came in, they would give us leads. These leads were like the oldest, most crustiest leads ever. And I worked for a big shop too, like one of the most notable, well-known, supposedly have a lot of money. I'm giving them a huge split, giving them like over 50% of my split, right? They pull out these leads from like the drawer, there's like coffee stains on them, and they're from some company. And it's like, these leads have been, this is the same leads. They've been called by this same office and many offices all over the tri-state 1,000 times, and we're still banging them over the head. And you know what? Sometimes they even work. You do those call nights and you get one appointment, the timing was right, you get a sale, and they're like, look, Michael got the listing, you should all too. Everyone come to call night, and got like 30 agents there pouring over these numbers. Well, at Project Queens, we get new leads from our listings, and they're able to be worked on. So that's closing out this listing and getting paid internally on our side. But then if you want to go above and beyond and differentiate yourself, and this is not really even differentiating myself, this is standard practice for me. I don't care what the industry says, I don't care what other people do. This is just what I've naturally knew I'm always supposed to do. After the deal closes, you follow it. Someone needs to buy it and they closed. That's a little more final on the sales side, but you still follow up and make sure your seller's good, make sure the buyer's good. Look, there could have been like an escrow put on the side on a sale and said, well, you know, these things have not been done, but you put the escrow on the side and the escrow will be released contingent upon item 1, 2, and 3 finishing over the course of the next 3 months, right? But people decided to just close anyway to get it done, right? So maybe now it's your job to follow up on these contingencies and the escrow for your seller. When it comes to leases, it's even more. It's like much more, right? Because now it's not a sale transaction where we're working with each other up until a certain point, and then we're like very clear to split. On a lease, and this is why it's more complicated, it's not just a transaction and bye-bye. you're getting into this relationship with one another. Sometimes the lease is 10 years with a 5-year option. You may have a 15-year relationship. That's longer, like this is twice the age of my kids. Like, I have a bigger relationship with my tenants than I do with my family. Like, that's the truth, right? And yeah, you paid for all this stuff, right? As the owner, right? You paid your commissions, you paid the attorneys, you paid for some landlord's work, clean up the space, blah, 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 blah. You haven't seen a dime yet, except for maybe your security deposit, right? So then what happens? The tenant needs keys. Then they need to start doing their construction, which is not just get some handyman in there clean up. It requires architects, permitting, different tests, then the construction, then the move-in. And then the move-in, apart from this, the construction is like a phase, right? You finish and now you can move in. Construction people gone, architects gone, DOB gone. But now they move in and they have all these questions. Where do I throw the garbage? Can I park here? Maybe they've been bad tenants or doing the wrong thing, not following the building rules. And the owner's like, what's going on, right? A lot of the time they're gonna have their own team for that. And you kind of just, they can handle it, they got their management team, but sometimes they don't, and they need someone to help. And if you're there to help and follow the deal through, right, you're giving better service. And how did that help you? You're keeping a relationship with this owner. You're keeping a relationship with this owner. Sorry, guys. Right, and the owner knows that, number one, you're following the deal through and through. Number two, in future deals, if he does have these problems, if he or she does have these problems, then you're still going to be here. You've proven that you're reliable, right? Number three, you're going to know about the rest of you have the opportunity to ask about the rest of the building or the rest of any other properties they own. Hey, this seems to be finally going well and smooth. Do you have anything else that you have for lease or anything else that's going to come up? There's a lot of opportunity here in terms of the follow-up. So, that's going back from the first class till now. That's really the whole process. And I think as in any sales business, maybe, what we're really trying to do is make this process as efficient as possible, right? And like a sales pipeline, right? Like the old school sales pipeline, smash as much stuff through it as possible and make it as smooth as possible, and just kind of keep looping it back and forth and let this thing grow, right? You become more of an expert with more volume. You become more of an expert on the market. You have more marketing, you have more branding, you make more money, more people. And if you're doing the right thing, if you're a good person, if you're trying to run things the right way, if you're well-intentioned, then you build rapport, right? This stuff happens. Now you add a time element. You did all these good things, and now you're adding this time element. And you have a proper business. It's very difficult to lose that once you build it, because of all of the things said before, the expertise, the relationships, all the things that you've done, and then you stack that over time. Why would anyone else go with anyone else? A lot of my clients have closed so many deals now together that, we've had so many celebration lunches and stuff that, why would they choose anyone else? I'm happy if they find someone better than me, go for it. I'll be glad. I'm happy that they're getting great service, but if I'm busting my ass as hard as I can and I am the best service, then I'm even more happy to take the business. So that is another Freestyle Friday by yours truly. It's 45 minutes in. Moving forward, that's the whole process. I might get philosophical about certain sales stuff, or with us and the team in-house, we're going to talk about it again. We might just redo the series. We might take a break. But anyway, thank you all for watching, and we will keep you posted with what's coming next.